start?
I'll tell you later.
I'll call this work session to order. Let's see, we all need to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
It's not me.
Okay, and we'll do roll call. Student Representative Howard. Here. Director Russell is absent. She's sick. Director Helens.
Here.
Vice Chair Smith-Reed.
Present.
Chair York is here also. On to the meat of the meeting. Item number 3, OSBA Superintendent/Board Development. And bullet points, Superintendent Evaluation and Communication Expectations.
All right,
I think it's up to you.
Okay,
You're on.
hi everybody, good to see you. Thanks for having me back. Tonight we are going to do a little bit of training in doing the superintendent evaluation. Obviously we're not doing that tonight, but I appreciate the fact that you all want to learn about the process. I'm going to go through the process as we recommend doing it. Obviously, we'll answer any questions. This is not a super lengthy training in that process. It's pretty straightforward. And then we'll move on to what we recommend for communication protocols. You've got the template and some questions to consider on that. What Rochelle has also provided you is just a copy of your board operating agreement to consider as we go through those communication protocols. So we'll get to that second. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with this order, so it'll take me just a second to actually get the thing up. Share this, and then I'm going to put it in a format that you can see it. Second. Yay, okay, it worked. Okay. So the first thing that I want to go through is our recommended process. So we've got our booklet that we go through. It is available online, but it's a very big multi-page booklet. But what I want to go through, you don't even have to have it. You can have it in front of you. There's a link to it. But I'll walk you through what the standards are and what the process is, because some of it would be specific to you. The things that are standard in it are the standards. So the first piece of this is to go through the standards. So we actually created this booklet with COSA, the Coalition of School Administrators, which is our sister organization that is a membership group of administrators. And we work closely with them, and we wanted to develop the system with them so that there was a superintendent voice in this and board voice, and because it's really meant to be a system of accountability and support. We really believe that the evaluation process is to hold both of those things. And so we went through standards, we put together standards that are drawn from national standards as well. And so I'll go through what those are. The second part of the evaluation process should be goals. We don't set those, so that is something that you would fill in, and we've got some recommendations for what those might look like. The evidence of performance piece is then multifaceted. So there are the quarterly check-ins, which I'll go through, the self-evaluation piece, and then the evidence piece, which is kind of a newer piece when we developed this in 2020, because really we had boards saying, hey, look, OSBA, you tell us not to be involved in the daily business of superintendents, but how do we evaluate these things when we're not involved in the daily business? So we developed the portfolio, the artifacts section, because that was a really big point. So we developed the artifact section that said, here are some things when evaluating these standards There are a list of things. It's not meant to say, hey, your superintendent has to provide all of these things to you, but some things that you and the superintendent might consider saying, here are things that you might look for when evaluating these standards. The targeted feedback survey, which I will actually not recommend for you in this year. I can go into why. And then, of course, the formal evaluation would be the big last part of that. So that's the process, which I will go through in depth, but just that's the outline of the whole process. The first piece of this then is the standards, and I'll go through what these look like. There are 8 standards that you would evaluate on, and this, as you go through this process, would be each of you going through these, ranking them by number, and then making comments. This would be where like a conversation would happen between all of you. So the first standard is visionary leadership, where there's more description of this in the book, but I'm trying to distill this for the purpose of this training. Where the superintendent is collaborative with the board, inclusive of the community, implementing the strategic priorities, right? So this is the big one, right? Like how does a superintendent lead the district? Ethics and professional norms, that one is pretty straightforward. Do they model the behavior of being just, fair, ethical in their daily operations? Having an inclusive district culture, having that supportive culture, and if you'll notice, when we did our training, we went through those board standards as well, and a lot of these weave into our board standards that we went through. But like having an inclusive culture, evaluating for that kind of thing, and supporting the rest of staff in underscoring what that inclusive and welcoming culture is supposed to look like in the district. Leading a system of culturally responsive instructional leadership and improvement. The superintendent may not necessarily be part of designing that system depending on the size of the district, but like modifying that thought but supporting that system, ensuring that the system is culturally responsive and that staff are trained. That's the first 4. Then communications and community relations. So how does the superintendent communicate with families, with a broader community, however that community is defined in your district, multiple constituencies and partners. Managing the district, the organizational management, hiring and retention, systems thinking, relationship with your unions, all of that goes into the management. Financial management, budget, aligning with strategic priorities, well managed. Now you do some of that, aligning the budget with strategic priorities, but how does the superintendent work with you in then translating that to their job in managing that? And then policy, governance, and advocacy, advocating for the needs of the district beyond the district office, having a good relationship with you all, being knowledgeable of whatever is applied to the district, laws, regulations, policy, things that are impacting the district and its students. So those are the standards. This is where that evidence piece comes in. This is where, when we developed this in 2020, we were getting feedback that, some of these are more intricate and, we were getting the but we don't hang over the superintendent's shoulder all day. And so we've got that list of evidence for each of these, that there are some ideas. And that is not meant to be in any of those cases a comprehensive list, but gives some ideas of things that you could look for. So before I get into these more deeply, I want to go through the timeline. The timeline is meant to be a year-long timeline because, if we're going to look at a process that is both for accountability and support, you don't want to start evaluation at the end of the evaluation process. This is a very important process and it's meant to be a feedback loop all year long. So as soon as now for a new superintendent, you don't have a last evaluation. So you want to, as soon as possible, adopt the evaluation process, tool, and timeline. All of this, by the way, The adoption of the process, tool, timeline, standards, all of that has to be done in public. And so we'll talk about like what can be done in executive session and what has to be done in public. But any discussion, I mean like tonight, but any discussion of tool, timeline, and process, all of that is public meeting stuff. So you adopt the evaluation tool, process, timeline, anything you're going to include in the evaluation should be done as soon as possible. Then, because you're going to evaluate on goals, the goals need to be adopted in public as well. So when your superintendent goes to set goals, our recommendation is give her a first pass at setting her own goals and then bring it going. I don't know, Corinne, have you set goals for yourself for this year, or do you have goals to be evaluated on?
Not yet, but I have ideas of what goals are for me, but yeah.
So my recommendation would be to let your superintendent bring her goals to you first, right? So I do not recommend that the board set goals and impose them on the superintendent unless you've got, like performance goals, like from a previous evaluation that you want your superintendent to work on. But it's always nice for your superintendent to say, here's what I want to work on. And it can be a combination of those things. But if Dr. Burns-Brown wants to say, here are some things that I want to work on, right, like the board should incorporate those things. I will also say, protect her time. And she is going to do a million things this year. Not all of those should be evaluated, right? We want to protect her time and pick, like, I would say no more than 3 to evaluate as far as goals. And also that protects your time as well, right? That protects her time and focus. So highly prioritized goals. It's not like she's going to do any less work, but highly prioritized evaluative or evaluated goals. Then the quarterly evaluative check-ins. So a lot of folks think of, okay, evaluation happens once a year. We do it in March, or we do it whenever the contract says that we do it. But we really recommend having evaluative check-ins. And when I say evaluative check-ins, I mean something different than a superintendent's report at a board meeting. If you are, this is my disclaimer, I'm sure I said this a lot to you last time, not an attorney, no legal advice. I think Rochelle knew what I was about to say. So I can't tell you when something qualifies and when it doesn't, but just like you can have the evaluation in executive session, if you follow that same process and have an evaluative conversation, you can have an evaluative conversation in executive session along the way, right? You don't have to produce a big document at the end of it, but you can have an evaluative conversation about standards, about, and give evaluative feedback along the way before the big summative evaluation, as long as you're meeting the provisions of the law. And so you would, decide that and ensure that you are. But from what we hear from boards and superintendents, that's really, really helpful, because no one wants to hear at the very end of the year how they have been doing, whether that's positive or less than positive, right? Like, you want feedback along the way. You want really honest, constructive feedback along the way. And so we recommend it be quarterly. Some superintendents and boards feel like that's pretty often. So at least once per year, you decide that timeline together with your superintendent. I would say if your superintendent asks for quarterly, you make the time to do it quarterly, right? Some superintendents that I work with, they're like, hey, I'm going to start bringing the evidence like along the way so that I don't have as much to bring at the end of the year. And some just really want that talk check-in. I have facilitated those quarterly evaluative check-ins that do both. That is really all up to you and what system works best for you. I don't have a best practice there, but I would say that like those check-ins are really. The targeted feedback survey, I'll tell you what it is, and then I'll tell you not to do it. And that's for this year. So I would not, in general, recommend any sort of feedback survey for this year. And I recommend that always for a first-year superintendent. For a first-year superintendent, they are, getting their arms wrapped around the district. They've got a million things to do, right? It is time to do level setting, getting to know you, getting to know the district, doing all of those first-year things. It is hard to capture really good data in a survey in the first year. It is much better data to capture after the community and staff have a year to get to know the work of your superintendent. So in our feedback survey, we do targeted response by our survey is aligned to the standards in the workbook. So we ask questions that are aligned to those 8 standards. And we have questions for staff and we have questions for community because those 2 groups of folks have different experiences with the superintendent. But they are meant to go out to folks that know the work of the superintendent, which you just don't have a lot of in the first year, right? And so, so I would not recommend that for the first year. We do not do 360 surveys anymore. Like we used to sit around the board table with boards and sort of develop surveys. What we found over the course of many years is that doing it that way kind of unintentionally solicited complaints. And so what we did was just really align our surveys with the standards. And we got like much more accurate, better feedback from, that board said, hey, this is better data. Superintendent saying, hey, this is better data. And now we just do this. But anyway, that's my recommendation for a survey in the first year. And then you get the summative evaluation at the end of the year. That is that document that comes for the superintendent at the end of the year, which you think about as an evaluation. Some considerations that I would give you, and I just said this, an evaluation is an all-year process, so you've got those check-ins. You really want to set those timelines really as early as possible. Also, I don't know what the dates are, and I think I've got a slide for this at the end if you're ready to talk about dates, but if you don't have a date in Dr. Barreras-Brown's contract, we generally recommend going with the March 15th date if there's not a date, because that's the administrator and licensed folks' deadline to renew contracts, and it's sort of like iffy whether or not that applies to superintendents, so we generally recommend having it done before then. Do you have an evaluation date in your contract?
No, I have a 3-year contract.
Right.
Yeah, but there's no, I don't think there's an evaluation date, but I'll look. I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You all can decide how that works best for you.
And I'm not saying that we have to do it this way, but I know one of the things that we kind of done over for quite a few years now is try to do one after Christmas break, going just starting the other half of the year and how's it going and what can we do to make the other half be better than the first half. So it's not really an evaluation, but it's more of a let's get together and figure out, where are we right now, where do we want to go. So
one of the most important things to remember is that evaluation is a one-voice document, right? It's not the many individual voices. This is the hard part, right? It's like everybody comes, they each fill out their own evaluation form, and then I facilitate a lot of these. I'm not saying I have to do it, but the job then is to get everybody's perspective into a one-voice document. That's one rating per standard and one set of comments for everybody. It does not mean that everybody, individuals get massaged out of it, but it does have to be the voice of the board, right? And it means that not everybody's individual comments generally, make it necessarily into the document. It means that the voice of the board comes out. And so what does the board want to say? There are a number of ways to do that. And so, how that works best for this board is how you would do that. There are ways that I do it. There are ways that, other boards do it. But it's important that your superintendent walks away with good direction, because that's the most important thing, that it's not confusing for your superintendent, that your superintendent has good direction from the board as to what the board is saying on all of these things. I already said this, it's a tool for accountability and support.
Can we back up for a second?
Yeah, of
So
course.
would you use like a 1 through 4, 1 being poor, 4 being excellent or whatever, and then just do an average of everybo's scores added up for each, or how does that?
Yeah, so in our tool, it is a 1 through 4, but like when I facilitate, I don't let boards average because like, let's say you've got 3 folks on a 1 and 2 folks on a 4, the average does not represent anybody, right?
Okay.
And so like, we really try and come to consensus. I have not had a situation where we haven't come to consensus, but if there were a time where like the board couldn't come to consensus, we would have a little like minority report thing, you know, where we would say like the majority of the board gave this rating. There was, you know, there was like a minority of the board wanted to reflect this. There can also be, you know, I always say to the board, there can be comments where like the majority of the board said this. There, you know, there also is like a suggestion that the superintendent also set a goal in this area on this standard, right? So, I mean, we like don't want to send mixed messages, but it doesn't mean that there has to be like not a nuanced, you know, evaluation. I mean, like the evaluation can be nuanced. It just like it can't be confusing.
Okay.
And then, of course, a good evaluation system avoids surprises, and that is why we really recommend that that quarterly piece. We never want surprises. Any questions, thoughts? Because I think my next, questions. Questions about the system, questions about evaluation in general, thoughts? I told you this isn't the hugest part. The training on this is not giant or super complex.
Well, pending, of course, what Corinne wants, would you recommend for this particular year doing just check-ins and then 1 evaluation?
That is what it is, right? Like there's the evaluation at the end of the year, and then you would have the check-ins along.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes for a first-year superintendent, sometimes, and I don't know that I would recommend this, I'll just tell you what I've seen some boards do. Sometimes, you know, boards will say, hey, we just want to really focus on a few of these standards. I don't know that I would necessarily recommend that because the standards are about performance. They're not about goals, right? They're not about things to go do. They're about ways of being and operating. So I don't know if that will come up in any of your conversations. I mean, because like you wouldn't necessarily want to say, we're not going to look at, you know, ethics and professional knowledge or something, because they're ways of being. They're not things that, you know, going to do. But you certainly can always take into context, like this is our superintendent's first year here, you know, when you are looking at the evaluating, right? The context is like, this is our superintendent's first year in this district. When you're looking at evaluation. Any thoughts? Yeah.
I was just going to say, we can ask for your assistance in the
Yes.
evaluation process.
I looked up the evaluation section of the contract, and it does say, and evaluate and assess in writing the performance of the superintendent by March 1.
By March, okay.
So it's following the same guidelines, yeah.
Okay. So then I would say really, really soon, you are going to want to adopt a tool, process, timeline. If you are going to be done by March 1, you'll want to do it in February, right? And you'll want, let's see, it's October.
Yeah.
So you'll probably have time for 1 check-in. Yeah, before March 1.
And I think that's probably why we did start in January, is so that we kind of be able to have it ready by March 1st for superintendent. But I also, another reason why we did, can't tell you how many times that meetings got delayed because of snow. I mean, it never failed, okay? So anyway, so you just have to think about that could happen, right, too. So our best of intentions.
Because the evaluation needs to happen at a work session, so we can be in executive session, right? I mean, a regular meeting, so we can be in an executive session to discuss it.
Yeah, evaluation
Sorry, I got
conversations
that mixed
can
up.
happen in executive
Yeah,
session.
okay.
Yeah.
But those are regular meetings.
No, they can be at either.
We can?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you can do them at either.
Okay.
But when you do a report out of a summary of an evaluation, that would be at a
Yeah,
work
you need
session.
to adopt, like, you need to come out of executive session and say
And then-
something like, we did the evaluation, we adopted it, like, there's part of it, like, most boards will come out and adopt a summary that says like, we did the evaluation, we found the superintendent, like, meeting standards or above standard, or excellent on these standards, and give some sort of summary to the public. And that can be brief, it doesn't have all of the, like, what you would put in a personnel file. That would be.
But like you were saying, we could have, like the check-in at the work session and not a work session, but work session and executive session, because you're not really reporting out the check-in. You're
Okay.
reporting out
Yes.
the actual evaluation, so that would be at the
Regular
board meeting, yeah.
At a later date, okay.
Yeah.
So I would recommend putting your date setting and adopting your tool process timeline on maybe your next board
Yeah,
meetings.
I would agree.
Good.
I would agree with that.
Hmm?
I would agree with that.
And to your question, Reed, yes, I do, you can ask
Okay.
them. And I will say yes.
I think some of us are very new, somebody's experienced, but
Yeah.
I think we could use the help, with that process.
I think Jan would be great to have her included
Yeah,
this time around.
I think it'd be great.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts on evaluation?
Mhm.
And the toolbox or whatever, the evaluation PDF that you guys had on your website you shared with us is really great. It's a great document to read, and it's, clearly articulates every step of the way. So,
It's long, there's a lot of narrative in it that you can probably skip through.
it's good narrative.
Huh?
It's good narrative.
It's good, I mean, like,
It is, but like,
fireside reading.
some stuff we don't need to know, like if the superintendent is also the principal. I mean, there's some
Right,
stuff we
yeah,
can just like
yeah,
skip
yeah.
over, you
Wanted
know?
to make sure that our small districts were incorporated and included. There's a whole section on the target feedback survey, you don't need to write this year.
Not this time. Yeah.
But yeah, okay, good. And then there's a whole thing you fill out, in the end, so, okay,
Thank you.
great. Okay, with that, if there are no questions there, I'm gonna stop sharing because the rest of this is not on a PowerPoint. The rest of this will be our work on communication protocols. So, I'm glad I got this in front of you. So, we talked about this last time I was here, the importance of, and we will always talk about the importance of just having common expectations. And the more common expectations you can have, the more transparent you will be, the better, because, the more your superintendent and you all have common understandings, the better that relationship is. That's not just in this room, that's life. So I sent this to you, and you've got your agreement in front of you because we always want to be consistent across agreements. And so I sent you this list of questions kind of as a starter. A lot of these questions show up in a lot of communication protocols that I end up working with boards. So I put them in the form of questions. But like, if I was gonna write this for you, which I will do, I will edit whatever you come up with and send it out to you like I did this. I would write it as like, okay, handle a crisis, what the superintendent does in a crisis. I'm not thinking really clearly, I'm thinking clearly, but I'm not speaking very eloquently right now. But like, what happens in a crisis? And then what the superintendent will do. So what I would love for us to do is go through this list of questions and come up with a common expectation. Because like, if something does happen, like, if there is a crisis that the superintendent is expected to be on the ground floor dealing with right away. She can't like call one person, send a text to one person, send an email to somebody else. That's just not possible. Like, so this is the easy one, not easy, but easy to describe. What can she do to get a hold of you all really quickly, send a one-way message to all of you, and you will trust that she will get back to you with the rest of the information when she can. So then, like, she's got one common expectation. So when we answer these questions all the way through, I will take notes and then feed back to you what the protocol is. And then if you think of other things that we can put on here, we can, but I wanted to start you out with not a blank slate. And if there's something on here that you don't want, we don't have to answer those questions. So first of all, let's go through and look at the questions for a moment. Is everything on here something that you would want on here? Because we can strike anything that you don't feel is appropriate.
I think it's all appropriate.
I agree.
Okay.
All appropriate.
Great.
And things that we've already been dealing with. So it'd be helpful to have clear, concise processes and procedures for how to handle this.
Is there anything, and if you can't think of anything right now, that's fine, we can start working through. Is there anything that strikes you just immediately that you would like to see added?
The only thing I think of, but I don't know that it falls under the communication, but it sort of does, is, and we've worked on it every year that I can never remember too. Okay, so it's not like this, I can come up with an answer. But when it comes to the word crisis, as we all know over the years, those have even changed as to what they could be, or, even from hurricanes that never would have happened, to a rioting, to a tsunami, okay? I mean, no matter what, but I know that even just the other day, we were having practices with our buses as far as an emergency and the kids all coming out knowing what to do to get on buses quickly. But I was just wondering if we couldn't put together somehow a list, at least of the main crises that you can come up with, and what is your answers, together. Because sometimes I know that we've had superintendents before, they come in and what they would have done might not work here, just even for the lay of the land, or how bus drivers couldn't even get here in time to do what you might think was the perfect answer, or Portland's, or, Newburgh's, whatever. So I would just love to have something that even talks about each of those categories and what we would do for them. I mean, you don't have to go all the way down to how you'd handle a kid if a kid did this, but a lot of our major crises is at least having an answer, and then the community to know what to do too. Because like when we had a fire at McBride, the original McBride, people came from everywhere, and they stopped in the middle of the highway and got out of their cars and ran because they were sure their kid was still inside, blocked fire trucks, I mean, you name it. So I just, I think that it's important for the community to even know what we would do and where they should head instead of trying to block, traffic, for example. So anyway, that's just something I wanted to talk about too. It's not just board members in crisis, but actual things in the district or whatever. So.
Well, and that's what this is meant to address, right? Like, and I think maybe that is more about like safety protocols that are probably like, there's probably some sort of district document or something somewhere that deals with safety protocols. But this would be like, if there are safety protocols that are being implemented that rise to the level that the district or that the board needs to know about, how is she going to get a hold of you to tell you that, right? Like if there is a fire, district's going to be dealing with that over here, but like, what is the mechanism by which you're going to be informed immediately?
Specifically us, not the community,
Specifically
because
you. Yeah.
Stacy can handle
Right,
community
specifically
relations
you
stuff.
all,
Yeah,
right.
okay.
Oh, I know, but I was just saying it's an addition to being in here, not just, I didn't put it in that category because I didn't
Yeah.
talk about, but
Yeah.
we were talking, should anything else be added to it? I was just saying.
Right.
I got
My suggestion on that would be that is operational.
That's what I was going to,
Yeah.
how would we get the superintendent's opinion on
Yeah.
what works good for them?
No, I know,
To get the
and that's what I
information
mean,
to
but
us.
like, to be left
Know
as a
how
board
they
member
would,
sometimes, you
how
don't
they'd
even
like
know.
to communicate it to us by either phone, email, or whatever works for you guys.
It's hard to put a definition on a crisis
Yeah.
too, because, I mean, it is relative. It's a crisis to whom, right? And also there's so many that you couldn't even imagine.
I know, that's why I said they keep
Right.
changing, so it's hard to keep up with, but right?
So if something happens, and since we won't be able to list everything in this document, right? Like that would probably satisfy, I think, what you're talking about, Melody, like in sort of a safety, like what would all of those things be? But let's say that's over here in more of a, when does safety and operational things kick in to deal with that? Let's say like something happens that does kick in, a safety protocol situation. So then at the board level, how does your superintendent notify you? Like that's what we'll put in here. So then let's talk about like what are your preferences and what are your like what is easiest and what are preferences?
I think for me, just an email, just
I think an email is
a
good.
flash email go out and just say, hey, we're dealing with this and more to come.
Yeah, and I sometimes, like, I have a really great communications director that I've said, I need you to like email the board this, or I need you to email it, and that's part of the response mechanism. So it might not be directly from me, but it would be, this is what's going on, blah, 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 because I might be in the middle of it, right?
Yeah.
And so and she's great at it, or even Paul I would delegate if I couldn't, but that's fine, an email works great for me
I think that's
too.
the quickest and easiest way, so you're not trying to call, text, or.
I would agree.
I also like that when you do message, you specifically say, do not respond to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's for the serious crisis stuff, like
Yeah.
fire, flood, kind of,
Yeah.
lockdown kind of thing.
Okay, so a quick email. And then I think the important thing about this one too is that there won't be, like in this first one, there won't be many details, right? And it's like this first one is the board trusts that the superintendent will get back to you all when there are more details available. And often you may hear things before the superintendent is able to get back to you, just because like if she's required on the ground to do things, like you may hear other stuff, but there has to be that trust that like, just because you haven't heard from her means that she's actively working over here, right? And so
Yeah, she didn't go home and forget about us.
right, or she's not keeping anything from you. It's because she's dealing with a crisis management,
In the middle of it.
right? Yeah.
Can I ask one quick question? Do you guys get, like, when I get stuff, I don't always get, I'm not saying you don't get a ping when you get an email, okay? But texting is the thing that comes whenever we've had emergencies before. I actually got a text, and that, I don't know why. It could be it's just my house, okay? But everybody got them immediately when it was an emergency, faster than, hey, it's an email from the school district, not realizing that it's that important. So I don't know,
I did hear you say at one of the last meetings that you hadn't received an email or something about something.
Quite frequently. I don't at my house, so I understand that one. But I know that when we have had emergencies before, we got a text so that it came. And it comes faster, and you realize it's important.
You could link your email to your phone.
Oh, I have mine. It's just, you have to know my house to know that. Anyways, but it isn't even just that. I just realized that, when a text comes across and it's coming from you, I'm gonna realize that is way more important than just an email from Rochelle or from Stacy or whatever.
Yeah.
Necessarily.
We have like the Google, what is it called, message?
Google Chat.
Google Chat that's hooked onto that's part of the email. My advice is that we keep things that are easily public record. Like, so yes, texts are fantastic to get quick, hey, this is happening. But I prefer, like, if we're gonna do an emergency response, that it goes through, and that'll ping on your phone just like a text would. It's through the school district, you have it in your account, and Ed can help us set it up for you guys on your phones, because I just pulled the app on my phone the other day, and it's fantastic. That's how I got when there's a 911 call, I get notified immediately. It's just a really nice mechanism to have, so that's what I would recommend if
Texting is easier.
Texting works better for you, and we could do a test run when you're at your house. I could text you from that, and see if it works out there before we agree to it. I mean, we could do a test run. It's just like a text, but it's through the school district communication.
Which I have on here too, it's not that, but it's.
Yeah.
I just want to find out, the texting, like I said, when we had one just before, it was emergency at the high school. I mean, that was all it was, but it was, then you knew this was important.
Yeah.
Something was going down.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have expected any more from you till you had time to get to it either. It's
Yeah.
just, then I realized there is something really going on, you know.
And maybe if it's on your phone, like the subject line will give a clue as well, right? Like, I mean, subject line will be pretty.
Emergency at high school.
Yeah, that's what I said, I don't care if it's either way, that's all it says.
Yeah, okay, if that works, then the next one, so how does the superintendent communicate to everyone if something is important but not a crisis, right? So if something is important and she wants you all to know, but it's not a crisis, but it's not, it's something that, maybe coming, now obviously, not something that everybody has to.
Could be a Monday, like you need it for Wednesday, but like. it's
Yeah,
The
exactly.
building's on fire.
Exactly, right. Like, I sometimes say, like, in a small school, I said this the other day to a charter school, like, hey, a teacher gave us 1 week's notice, like that, like not, and is leaving, and of course, in a charter school, that's a very big deal, something like that. That's not a crisis, but it's very important to know, something like that. Like, how would that be communicated? Something that's important, but not a crisis. You may not get all of the information right now, but it's also something that you might hear about. And how would you expect to hear about that?
Well, I hate to sound redundant, but an email sounds great.
I mean, it can be the same thing. We don't think it's super creative.
And then we also, we do Parent Square
Yeah.
for the board now too, like, so
Yeah,
whether we
that works
found
out
out
really well.
that some folks, if you don't have children in the district, you don't get a Parent Square. And so it's nice if there's information out there that's like, hey, there's an open house or whatever, those things are also going now to the board through that Parent Square, because we've got access to it. And then even that, if there's an urgent matter happening at the middle school, there is a way that we can connect where they're getting the same information that all middle school parents are getting at the same time through that Parent Square, right? And so those things are really cool, because then there's not this one-off having to have, so.
But can you send a message then just to board members through Parent
Yeah.
Square?
You
have
can,
a
but I
parent-
prefer email when it's me, we're just going to you, me to you, or I'm having Paul email you, but I'm just saying that there's other ways we can keep you informed on multiple things that are happening in the
Okay.
school
Parent
district.
Square, you can have a
Through
message.
the Parent
or like a
Square, yeah.
post.
Yeah.
Right.
But I agree, I think just if it's me emailing, yes.
So email for this one as well?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, who handles media requests?
Okay, all right. Okay, so Stacy, but always?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Unless, and Stacy is our communications director, so it's me or Stacy, we're the
What
delegate.
is Stacy's last name?
Mendoza?
But, yeah, we
Or
gotta,
me,
we have
because
to
we are
ask you first.
we're the spokesfolks for the spokespeople for the district, spokesfolks for the district. However, there have been times, and you might smack me on the hand for saying this, but there have been times where we've, in other spaces, where the board has selected, like the board chair, to collaborate with the superintendent or Mendoza to give the board perspective on things if they're being asked questions. Like I had for example, I met with a reporter that wanted to know about the opening of schools, and Reed sat in because I want to share a collaborative approach to when we are talking about the school district, we're all on the same page on things. And so, the board can.
That is likely a policy that is the board officer role. Like, there's a board policy on board officers, and it's likely a policy that that's part of the chair's role.
Good. I don't know if that's specifically, but I'll look, but yes.
Yeah, it often says that the board chair
Represents the voice of the board.
Yeah.
So, okay, then that
I
works.
think I read it in there already.
Yay, great. But that's in collaboration,
In
because we
collaboration,
wouldn't want,
Yes.
we don't want mixed messaging
Correct.
going out, because even like if Stacy's reporting on something, I'm always right there,
Yeah.
want to know how to, or we check in to make sure that we're giving
Right.
shared messaging around certain things, because it just gets confusing if multiple people are.
And what is Stacy's title? Because I don't want to put names.
Director of Communication?
Director of Communication.
That's correct, right?
Okay.
I'm so new.
So we'll keep it general. Okay. Great. Okay. How are school visits handled? So you have policy BBAA,
Mhm.
which gives some information, right? It's policy BBAA says that board members can visit schools to gain information. Where that stops and where I usually, recommend that communication protocols go a little further is it stops at like, okay, do you notify the superintendent? Do you notify the principal? Do you have somebody walk around with you? Like the policy BBAA kind of stops there at just you can go. If there's not sort of a common expectation about like, how you go, notification is usually good, maybe having somebody go with you, something like that, but there should be sort of an expectation or a common understanding between all board members and the superintendent about how that goes. So what is your preference? How would you like to handle that?
I think that we should be escorted
Yes.
by administrators. I also think it's really important we understand we're not there to be evaluative in any way, because that's not our job. I think that that's important for everyone who sits on this board to understand.
And if we're sending somebody there, it has to be the approval of the board, set up ahead of time to go into class and look at something.
It's confusing for me because are there exceptions? Like my husband is a teacher, can I go to have lunch with him?
That's completely different.
But I don't know because I'm
Yeah.
not there as a board member, I'm
Yeah.
there I've been avoiding it because,
Well, don't do that.
well,
That's
And
different.
it's
I see
been
him all
hard
the
as
time.
board members, since so many of us do have somebody
Yeah.
in the building, whether it's
Right.
our own kid or
Right.
at different events. But one of the things I felt like too that we really hadn't had the talk about is that there's that difference between school visits, so you're just walking in to go walk the halls and go check out things, and then there's the volunteering side of school visits, and that is two total different
I would
things.
agree.
right, yeah.
And so many of us are there for different reasons, or if somebody just says, hey, I need help, somebody down here help me load up this or unload this truck or whatever. So many times the board members are the first ones that would be that volunteer, just like we're
Yeah.
volunteering to be here, so.
So I think that would be worth some clarification actually in this section, right? That like volunteering is distinct from visiting a school to gain information, right? So,
And Reed and I had a conversation about this, if you don't mind me sharing,
No, go ahead.
about like, because he wants to volunteer because one of his students goes to a specific school. So he said, do I just go through the volunteer process, and if I have a scheduled time that I'm attending, do I have to give notice every time? I'm like, please don't. I don't need notice every time you're volunteering at a
Yeah.
school, that's different. But if something changes within that volunteer, like you're adding something or doing something different, just make sure that we've communicated that with me and with the principal, the administrator, right? But yeah, absolutely, we want board members volunteering in schools and supporting.
just as anybody else would.
Yeah,
right? Like they
just as
work out their
anybody else.
schedule, they work out the
Yeah.
volunteer
Like
I'm
schedule.
going to an hour
Right.
training on Sunday
Right.
with that.
So your thoughts about, so outside of volunteering, which you could do just like anybody else would do, and I think that it would be good to call that out in here, which I will do. If you wanted to go tour the school as a board member to get familiar with something certain, do you think then, would you like me to put in here that, so first of all, who gets notified of that?
We first have to ask the
Superintendent.
superintendent, yes, and ask her to coordinate it.
Okay,
Because
Coordinate.
even though we're board members coming, we still
Right, we-
disrupt.
Created a standard operating procedure, we would more than happy to share that with you, how to implement some of the policies that kind of left the blank. Because this school district had already had a standard operating procedure, but they didn't have it written down.
okay.
And so we just wrote down, and you had shared the standard operating procedure, that the superintendent or an administrator did escort on visits, and you had been escorted on a visit when you wanted to go tour the high school. with, and Stacy brought you through.
Yeah.
So so we just put it to writing. We created it, and it would follow, the communication process that they would notify, and we would arrange someone to support.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then the procedure would be then you're notified and then you arrange for somebody to.
I would notify the
Support.
principal, yeah. I mean,
Okay, then you notify principal. And then.
to see if that works. We also don't want to tell principals, this is when this is happening. We
For
want to
scheduling,
engage
yeah.
conversation and be flexible in schedule, but we also know that everybody's working people here, so maybe
Right.
certain times would work better for folks, and that, I think that would be fabulous.
And then arrange for somebody to go.
Not always me.
Right.
And I think for me is that I just was always been around so much because I always had kids in practically every building for so many years, that if I needed to ask something, I was already there. I asked it while I was there, so I never went out of my way to just come and stop in to tour the building or whatever, except for when we built new ones and they had to check.
But it's pretty easy here though for us now because I'm in schools, I work from schools 2 days a week and Jeff works from schools 1 day a week. So there's 3 days a week, there's an assistant sup or a superintendent at the school. If you choose to go on one of those days, we'd be more than happy to, show you around. But the administrators themselves, they're busy people, but they still want the opportunity. They get excited to. The first time I've spent at a building, it was fun because every time I go, now that I've been there now, it's like tomorrow will be my first time at Columbia City, and I'm certain that the administrator will want to show me around and take me through spaces. I bet it was there before there were any students there this summer, but this will be nice to be there and working from the building. And they love to walk people around and show off the wonderful things that are happening in the school.
What about for assemblies and stuff? Do we need to check with you if we can attend assemblies? If the high school's having a homecoming assembly?
Things that
Or
are just
volunteer for
everybody
prom
else.
or something
Yeah,
like that.
Parents are,
You're so busy to the school, it just
Okay.
would be nice to let us know so that we can let the principal know, because when it's open to families, that the students that go there, yes, if your student goes there, then yes, but it's not open to the entire community for people that students don't go there.
okay, got
So
it.
if your students are there, you wouldn't have to let me know because you're acting as a parent.
Right.
But if you're going as a board member because your child doesn't go there, or visitor, then just
Right.
let us know so that they know that you're going to be there.
Okay,
That's what I would recommend.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the hardest part is that we do have different administrators. We haven't had the same events for different reasons, from COVID to you name it. So in a little bit, there hasn't been a lot of regularity as far as it used to be, where there was everything from, everybody knew exactly when homecoming was and exactly when the Christmas programs were, to you name it. And
Well,
those
I
things went on.
guarantee you, if you would like to volunteer as a chaperone at one of the dances
I
or
did.
prom, they
I
would
did.
love to have
It was
you
fun.
chaperone. So I would say get on those lists.
I'm gonna volunteer for prom, because I got a new dress.
Oh, I love it. I love it. But seriously, we're always looking and scrambling
Yeah.
for volunteers all over the place for those events. And the more, the better. Right? I'm looking at our student, right? He just smiles. Oh.
Okay, all right. So next, what if there are, and these are the things that policy doesn't cover very well, so these get more specific. What if there are issues between a board member and the superintendent? How are those addressed if one-on-one conversations are not providing resolution, right? So these are more relational questions, and these are the things that are really good to have in a protocol So obviously, we are all gonna, make an attempt to resolve communication. I think, is this in your thing? This is probably here. This is why we brought this out. Hang on. Yes, so in communication agreement, number 3, board members and the superintendent shall communicate one-on-one when an individual concern arises with any member of the board superintendent team as appropriate. So we have that, right?
Yeah.
That's foundational. We understand that. But what if there's board member superintendent tension, and what happens if, the one-on-one conversation is not providing resolution?
I think board leadership, I mean, personally, that's what I think, right? Step in, board leadership sits in on the conversation with one-on-one, right?
Right.
Is
Guys,
that-
that's what you mean by that though, exactly.
Chair, vice chair sitting
So
in.
They're doing
say
like the 2-on-2 meetings.
you and Corrine are, not communicating well, then Reed would sit in on a conversation with you two and try and help resolve it more as like
Okay,
a
I just wanna make
mediator.
And if you don't.
I'm
sit there,
guessing.
Then they can ask.
Then I'll get Christine to
Yeah.
ask.
I'm guessing. I literally have no idea what I'm doing on any of this stuff, but that seems
No,
to
it
me
seems
like the
like-
logical
Yeah.
thing,
It does.
but I don't have a clue. So,
Well, and I was thinking, one of the things on this issue itself, I mean, I'd love to write down so that everybody knows where we're going from here, but I was saying, we've just had, over the last couple of months, so many brand new people.
Yeah.
And not enough time, no matter what, to
Mhm.
have even gotten to even understand all these parts, let alone for everybody, but to have 3 brand new board members all at the same time, you're just lucky because you had a couple months before that we made you work, on the budget. But other than that, I know that that's part of it, and you had to go right into a brand new school, right into a crazy month of September for no matter who it is, we could all have been here for 20 years, September is still crazy, doesn't matter. So I feel like we're now into October, start having more time together and getting to know things and understanding these rules and how you would like to, be able to do stuff. But for me, if there's a one-on-one with it, if it doesn't work with him, then another one-on-one with somebody else until we can all try to, be on the same page. So if it takes more than one, we have to figure it out.
I'm pretty confident one board member talking with the superintendent should be able to hash it out and figure out what the problem is and come up with a solution without having to involve anybody else. But if it does, then come to the board chair or the board vice chair and ask them to sit in.
yeah, I think sometimes emotions are high and it's sometimes when emotions are elevated, it's tough to even be able to have a mediator.
Yeah.
So,
Sometimes you hear what you want to hear.
Yeah.
You don't hear the other part.
right, and I think, just me personally, if I have an issue and Reed comes in and says, you're wrong, I'm like,
You can
next.
probably tell him where to go, right?
next person, I want to hear from the next person, because
I wouldn't do
Reed
that
is
to you.
wrong. I know, I'm just
Yeah.
saying that when we are emotionally
Right.
involved or invested in our opinions and somebody tells us we're wrong, we don't want to hear that. And I don't know how we resolve that, no matter who it is, no matter when it is. And maybe that's just it. You just keep rotating out people until, because we're adults, you're not an adult, but the rest of us are adults and we can have adult conversations and also be wrong and also be outnumbered. And those things are just part of being on a board. But I think sometimes when emotions are elevated, it can be a difficult place to, when you're the person who is emotionally elevated, it's hard to hear other people disagree with you. Right, and so how do we then move forward while making that person understand that we hear you, you're being heard, we just don't agree? I don't know how to move forward that way. And it kind of pertains to this, so that's why I'm asking.
Oh, you were there. So,
Yeah, what's your opinion?
well, so,
Put you on the hot seat.
this is my job. So, first of all, I will back up and say, I agree there is a role for board leadership here. And this is part of the tough job of board leadership, right? Like they get to sometimes, if the situation calls for it, play mediator. And that is part of the role. Obviously, we want to work out issues at the lowest level possible. There's always the, when I do conflict management, there's always the what do I want for myself, what do I want for the other person, and what do I want for the relationship? And ultimately, there's that question on the full board. What do we want for the relationship, and what do we want for our students, right? We model the way for our students. And then I like the idea of if it's not working with the board chair, bring somebody else in. And I totally agree, Christine, that like nobody wants to hear that they're wrong, right? Like, of course, nobody wants to hear that they're wrong. I think that we can obviously start with, and then of course there's a question of like what's wrong, right? But like we can always start with empathy and validating, like, I hear your frustration, I hear where you're coming from, I understand I understand where you got there, how you got there, right? Mm-hmm. And even if I don't agree, I can see how you got there. And I don't know, like, there's maybe that role of being the third person in the room, like, I hear how you got there. Like, I don't agree, and I hear how you got there. And what is it a matter of after that? Is it a matter of what is it that we don't agree on? Do we not agree on policy? Are we not agreeing on practice? Like, and how, like, what is the adjudicator at the end, right? And how do we agree on what is moving forward? So one of the things that I have learned, like, in some of my training is, like, it is eventually pointless to argue the facts because, like, we are emotionally charged beings, right? And so, like, when you end up arguing the facts, like, it doesn't even matter at some point.
You lost.
Right. And so, like, then I don't know, so then it becomes about, the relationship and validating, like, so I do think when we have somebody else who's there to maybe help folks get grounded, then it is about, like, I don't have to win this argument to save the relationship, but it is about, like, being heard and valuing the relationship enough to move through the conflict in order to get to, what is it that I want for myself? What is it that I want for the other person? What is it that I want for the relationship? And what is it that we both want at the end of this conversation? Like, what do we want to walk out of the room with? And what is the common solution at the end of this? And sometimes at the end of all of that, because, like, so stepping back from just like human dynamics, ultimately you all sit on the decision-making board. So if the argument is technical in nature, right? If the argument is like, and I'm making something up now, but if the argument is like, what is it that a board can do or a board member can do or whatever, because often what causes conflict are like, this is information that I want, this is what I think that I can do, this is what I think that a board can do, or this is what I'm going to go do. The board ultimately gets to decide that.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that conversation has to be had in public, right? If the private conversations aren't working, then this gets talked about in public.
Okay. I'm curious, Reed, what happens if you have a problem with like Dr. Brown? Is she the only one who can sit in, or can another board member?
I don't know. I wouldn't have any problem if she could sit in, and I don't think it'd be a problem if another board member sat in.
That's what I was curious about. You said like board leadership can't only be vice chair.
No.
I don't know. So
I just think kind of as a general rule, it probably should be, but.
It usually starts
Yeah.
with the chair. Yeah, I mean, it usually starts with the chair, but just because the chair has that leadership role. But yeah, I mean, certainly if the conflict involves the chair, it's going to start. But I think also if there's just some level of comfort that folks have with somebody else, there's nothing wrong with being somebody else.
I don't see an issue where I'm gonna have with the superintendent that we can't solve.
Yeah.
It's early. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just joking.
And I would be evaluated. But I think that from my experience in education, quite some time now, I'm not going to say the date because it ages me, that it's, whether it be board superintendent relationship or teacher administrator or, we could be anyone in the organization.
It's all human.
It's all, but it really is around roles and responsibilities
Yeah.
and having a clear understanding of what those things are. And there's research around organizational conflict, and it has to do with the ambiguity. If there's too much, if you are not, we have to set the guidelines, like what is our role, what is the understanding of board work, superintendent work, or principal work and teacher work, superintendent administrator work, having clear understandings of those things and identifying that out loud and having it in writing, because then you can refer back to it. So that's where and then of course the personalities differences, of course those come into some of the conflict, but the majority of the time it's because we don't fully understand our role and our responsibility.
Yes.
And so me sitting down and clearly, like, just give an example, with a brand new, administrator, sitting down and being able to say, hey, this is your role, this is your responsibility, or this is the shared messaging around this. Like oftentimes when I sit down and do a coaching or mentorship with someone, they say, well, when I go back and have this conversation with this direct report, should I say, well, the superintendent says that, like, no, I'm helping you with what you should, like, we're role playing what you should be doing. And as an administrator or director, you would be saying, this is coming from me, these are my expectations, right? And so I think that just being really clear with one another, our roles, our responsibilities, and our expectations of each other through these things, create that great working relationship, right? That professionalism. And then when we do have a disagreement, we fall to these things to have those disagreements, and we don't have to always agree on things, but we should always treat each other with dignity and respect. And there shouldn't be any ambiguity around superintendent role and board role, or superintendent role and principal role, right? Or principal role and teacher role. There really should be clear understanding of what those things are.
Should be.
Yeah. And so I feel like that's part of, I'm speaking from experience on when the conflicts are there, it's because we don't have clear understanding.
And the things that are supposed to address potential ambiguity are policy, which is most
Standard
of it,
operating
right? This is
procedure.
my policy
ARs.
binders when printed out are the things,
Yeah.
right? And then, that's right. And then where policy, where there are gaps, that's why we have these, that's why we're creating communication protocols,
And
right?
ARs.
And ARs, how to implement, like that's the purpose for all of those things. And then why we keep going to, this is why I started with this is why we keep going back to, like, any time we can have tools that set up common and mutual expectations. That's just going to underscore a better relationship.
And then we have to own that there was huge amounts of trauma and things that happened last year in November that caused a distrust of certain people and experiences. And I'm coming in like having this new energy and hope, and it's like I don't have, like you're saying, emotional connection. I don't have that yet because I wasn't here through that experience. So when I speak, I'm speaking directly. I'm like, okay, well, let me go see what the policy says. I'm going to the policy because I don't know all of the policies, although most policies in Oregon are similar because we all work with Oregon School Board Association, but sometimes they differ slightly. So I always go to policy or standard operating procedure or guidelines, and it might be where it sounds like I'm really being like, this is the way it's supposed to be, or, oh, hey, we're not following policy. This is the role of the superintendent. This is the role of the school board. And it's not me judging or trying to step on anyone's toes. It's me because I'm brand new. I don't hold that distrust. I trust all of you until trust is broken, right? And so those are the things that I think also play into this.
I think it's really easy to say that all three of the new board members watched a disaster unfolding, and the only reason we ran is because we wanted to make a difference. And whatever that difference is, it looks different in each of our eyes. And we did all have a lot of distrust in the former leadership. And it's really easy for that to carry over because no one wants to be blindsided again because there was so much trust put into the former leader that people were like, disasters were happening. And you are not the former leadership. So it is a mind switch. You have to stop being angry at the former leadership and see that there's new leadership and we have to give it a try. But I think, and I feel like there's some concern in, like, what if, because you're just so sweet and cute and nice, what if we're too trusting, right? I don't feel that. I feel like you're proving yourself every single day, even though you don't have to, you are. So for me, it's easy enough for me to see you're doing the work. But I just want to say that I know that there's,
Valid.
yeah, and it feels personal, I'm sure, because you are a person.
Yeah.
And the only leader, right now.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to say that, because I think that's
yeah.
it's important to understand that you are not the past, you are the future.
Yeah, and then practicing the balanced governance. Like, I love the fact that we all went to the conferences, because we don't want it to be a rubber stamp, right? I don't want to ever, like, you guys just go, oh, pass, or
Right.
what else? You need there. That's why we have discussions. That's why there's motions and then there's a discussion before the vote. Like, it is okay to disagree with each other and with, or ask questions.
Right.
And then, but I like that when we say no surprises, like, those things can happen in our board 2x2s. They can happen even if there's not a board 2x2 schedule, to say, hey, I really want to stop in this week because I have some questions that I want to ask before the board meeting, and we set up a time for you to do that, so that there isn't surprises, right?
Yeah.
So that we can work through it and talk about it, and then it doesn't mean that I want to change your opinion or your perspective. I might be holding information that you don't know.
Right.
And maybe that information should not be shared at an entire board meeting for the discussion, but the operationally things that you might ask about a certain program, or have the conversation about the assembly or something that's happening at the school. But those things can be asked during that time, right? And I think that that's critical for that communication, those communication agreements.
Yeah.
But nobody wants anyone to be a rubber stamp, right? We want us to have conversations. We want us to all be voting, whether we're voting, we're not all voting the same direction, right? But we are all we're having our influence and our perspective shared. I think the problem that I'm seeing, I'm just going to be completely bluntly honest as well, is that we're new, right? We're all new. I'm not new to superintendent work or leadership work. I've been doing this quite some time, but I'm new to St. Helens and learning the systems and the personalities and the feelings, lots of feelings attached to what's happened. And that's not me judging that I'm having to learn that because I wasn't here, right? But the not understanding that board governance is here, and I'm lucky, and you're lucky. We get to play in the garden every day. You guys don't get to be in the garden. You're up here at the board governance. Right. I don't hate to say the trenches. We're in the garden every day. I don't say the trenches. And we're doing that work, and it's sometimes, you're not in the light until you're in the light, right, of what's really happening. And so I think that just asking those questions and trusting, and then making informed decisions at the board meetings, not because if you're not making informed decisions, you're rubber stamped.
Right.
Or you're hearing the rumors that are out here and you're not in the garden and understanding what's really going on. Right. So.
I know Reed and Melody doesn't really need to, but, just because you've been around a long time, Reed and I've leaned on you quite a lot for direction, and you'll say, well, it's on this policy. So, okay, then we'll go and we'll read the policy ourselves. And then, but you have guided us a lot, so I think that's really helpful.
And I was thinking that in the same light as that. I still feel like even in past or even now, is a lot of times it's one person's understanding of something is completely different than someone else's, or their expectations. And I mean, we all know that, we all think that the president should solve all the world's problems, and our town thinks that the school board should have taken care of everything, and the school board thinks that the superintendent should have done it. She thinks the principal should have, and so everybody does understand they can't just walk in and expect that we should have solved every single thing that was wrong, or you should have, or even you, okay, so.
We're in, yeah,
It is
and
hard.
we have to remember, we are in the second month of school. Like, I was just talking to the superintendent advisory council next door, and we are just entering the second month of school. And so I feel like, you know, there's growth, there's growing. I mean, I feel I've seen a lot of wonderful things that are happening in our schools. And then I see things that I need to address. I'm there all the time, right? And so I can make those decisions, and we can talk about those things at those board 2x2s, because I want you to be informed, right? But I do think it's going to take a lot of all of us. It's shared responsibility, shared messaging, and that we're following policy and our roles, right? Because if we're not, that's when all that. If we're not functioning at the level we should be functioning at the board level, then we can't expect the garden to be without, you know, weeds and blossoming and blooming and growing that strong vegetable.
I love the garden. Because it also gets to use in the weeds.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm gonna use it and steal it.
the weeds.
So for this one, then we've got, so what I've written down is that board leadership would sit in on the conversation. If that, you know, someone else, if that's not working. From there, if an individual conversation is not working, that comes to the board to discuss operating agreements.
It needs to.
But
That's
can
it.
you give an example of what it looks like to discuss operating agreements in the boardroom?
Yeah.
Because I think that's important.
Sure.
Because we did have it on the last agenda, but I don't think we actually
didn't
really
touch
went
on
over it.
No.
Okay.
So it was just, could you like role play for us what that looks like?
Sure. So, and I've seen this happen, and this can happen in a really calm, you know, like, I mean, and it should, right, in a really calm, civil, respectful way. So when you put it on the agenda, it can just be like, you know, discussion of board operating agreement. And so the conversation is usually, how are we adhering to our operating agreements? And it is generally, you know, led by the board chair that it is, you know, we should check in every once in a while on our operating agreements. We should look through these. We should talk about particularly and invite our superintendent into this as well, because superintendent has expectations of the board too. You know, we have collaborative governance agreements, we have communications agreements, and then, you know, we have expectations of the superintendent, she has expectations of us. We should really read through this and discuss amongst ourselves whether we feel like we are living up to our agreements, whether we feel like we have these and are holding these in fidelity. And have an honest conversation that is transparent to us and to our community. And if we are, that's good. And if we're not, this is a document to hold ourselves accountable, and that is why we adopted it.
Do we feel like that then becomes evaluative? If a board member doesn't particularly think that she or he is being heard, and we start going over this, is that opening up some evaluation?
So can it turn, okay, so do you mean of the superintendent?
Correct.
Okay, so if that feels like that's a risk, it can be framed as, you can certainly put guardrails around a conversation, because you can't have, you have, in order to have an evaluation of the superintendent, there has to be notice given, right? And so when the conversation is opened up, it can certainly be like, you know, we're either just talking about our part tonight, and any evaluative conversation of the superintendent would need to happen in a quarterly check-in.
And
for
an
example.
executive session,
An
or
executive
executive
session.
permission, that
I mean,
it's an
you
open
get to
session.
choose whether or not it's
And-
executive
and-
session or not.
One day, like that's my goal, to get us to a place in St. Helens where we can model really healthy conversation around performance evaluation for our staff and what that looks like, and growth mindset, like areas that I want to grow and be able to have those conversations, areas of, strengths, and really, because performance evaluation is for, like you said, support, and, it's not, and I think that we need to do that for showing our principals and our educators, like what it really truly means to have those healthy conversations. And I'm not ready to go into that conversation in public, because I do feel like we need to be healthy in these things,
Absolutely.
and in the communication,
Right.
and healthy in our roles and responsibilities before we can articulate that in public, right? Because I think just doing it in public is going to cause more harm to everyone, because we're not modeling.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think the way then to open up the conversation is that this is, that it can't be an evaluation of the superintendent because proper notice hasn't been given. That conversation would be, had in an evaluative conversation that would be set up for that purpose. That what we want to address tonight is the section of the board operating agreement that has to do with our agreements with each other. And then the board chair is responsible for ensuring that conversation happens.
I feel like I don't feel like that is, if a member of the board is having a disagreement or something with the superintendent and it's not being resolved in a one-on-one setting or with board leadership involved, then bringing it to a public board meeting where we discuss this feels like all it's going to do is become evaluative.
The disagreement itself doesn't get brought to the table,
Okay,
right?
okay.
The adherence to your agreements
Okay.
gets
So an
brought to the
example,
table.
so let's, like I said, role play,
Yes.
like an example.
Yeah.
So like,
What about
so
change
my,
command?
like, I can, that's what I was gonna say, that was, we were thinking, like, I was saying, like, okay, so the superintendent's expectation, like, number 3 is willingness to acknowledge and follow the chain of command of the school district.
And that's also in communication agreements,
Yeah.
right?
And the communication
So that's a really important one. It's also in policy BBAA, right? So as you're looking over this, and you are all sitting at the board table, you're looking over collaborative governance, and one of you says, I think that maybe we are struggling with communication agreement number 1.
Okay.
I think that we're struggling with chain of command. And how can we improve this? What is our system for following chain of command? And communicating, when a question arises or a concern, like what are we all doing? When we are hearing a concern, what is our practice for that? What is supposed to be our practice for that? How are we doing that? Can we give some generic examples? Like we're not calling out staff members, we're not identifying anybody, we can't do that at a board meeting. But, if we're not adhering to this, how do we get ourselves back on track?
Okay.
So the conversation is focused on the agreements themselves.
And you can even pull policy to say,
And
what is
policy
our
alignment.
staff communication
Yeah.
policy around the board and superintendent?
Yeah.
I can't even say that up. Which one is that? It's pull it up. You pull up the policy and you can even read over it at that time, right?
I think it's like BG.
Yeah. I think it is
I
too.
love how they
Look at
label
you.
I
this
was
stuff.
gonna
Like,
say,
we could
wow, isn't
play-
that nice?
We could play a game of, what is it that we played with the OSBA rep?
Jeopardy?
Jeopardy.
We're gonna have a team next
We're
time.
gonna win. We're gonna win. All right, I'm gonna look it up real quick. But yes, that's what, and then you can refer back to policy and we can look at it. That's what I do, is like, when we're doing something and we're trying to create a standard operating procedure, I'm like, well, does that align with policy? So we have to go and we look it up. We just did it today in cabinet, didn't we, Ed? Pull up a certain policy and review it to make sure that we're following it. All right, so let's see. That'd be board of governance, right?
I think it's BG.
You're right.
Sometimes though, I notice through all the years of policies is that no matter how hard you try, a lot of them sometimes have what I call big words in them. Does not always mean that you are reading it the same way, that she's reading it the same way I'm reading it.
There's room for
Well,
interpretation.
Yeah,
policy
definitely
is all about interpretation.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what kind of policy it is, it's
Yeah.
about interpretation.
It is.
Yeah.
So-
Which is a good conversation for the board table, right? Because like, if you end up having a calibration conversation at the board table, which, ends up being like, hey, wait, we're all reading this differently.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that has been the problem.
Okay, so like this, so it says staff communication to the board. All formal communication or reports to the board or any board committee, staff members will be submitted through it will be submitted through the superintendent. And then said board communication to staff. All official board communication policies and directives of staff interests and concerns will be communicated to staff members through the superintendent. The superintendent will provide appropriate communication to keep staff informed of the board's policies, priorities, and actions.
Yep.
That cannot be misinterpreted. I'm just being honest.
It should be, but don't think that it's not.
I think that also at the end of the day, like if you have a calibration conversation because everybody's reading it differently, if there's still questions at the end of it,
Can we
like,
edit it?
well,
right? Can we
either
modify
edit
it?
it or call us because our policy director will tell you what it means. Right. I mean, we wrote it and likely, depending on what it is, there could be some legal reference in it that can be interpreted. Now, B section policies have fewer legal references in them, right? But,
This one has ORS 332.107
Right.
and then some.
right, so, but, we wrote them.
Yeah.
We can tell you what they mean. So, and, if there's room for you to change them, then you can change them in a way that makes sense to you all, right? But like, if there's no agreement on what it means, you can call the author. At least as a next step.
Well, and if the majority of the board agrees and is interpreting it the same as the superintendent, then
Yes.
you guys get to make the decision.
Yeah, and in the
This is
end.
how we're gonna interpret it.
And in the end, and I know that this, comes down to bureaucracy, but this is what the majority of the board decides the direction of the board, right?
That is why there is a board.
That's right. That's why there's an odd number of board members.
Yeah, typically, yeah.
I know, not right now.
Soon.
Uh-huh. Did you already appoint some?
No.
Not yet.
No, you're in the
Upcoming.
application
Board meeting,
process.
next board meeting.
The next board meeting, everybody.
Oh, that's right, you gave me the whole.
Yep.
Right, the whole thing. Next board meeting, okay. So, do we have that, like, you ultimately talk about something about your board operating agreement in public, like, if the private
Yeah.
conversations
Yeah.
aren't working, we
Yeah.
talk
That
about,
does,
okay.
that does
And
make
we
sense.
can put, operating agreement with a specific
With,
section that we want to talk about.
yeah,
And
And policies.
you know what I
policy to
should
support
have
it.
done? I know that you already adopted this, you know what I should have done for you though? I should have aligned it with the policies that go along with this.
You could,
So, I can redo it.
we can amend it. I think that would be
Because what I
fabulous.
could do for you is just put, in parentheses next to it, BG, BBAA.
Yeah,
next to
that would be
all of
fantastic.
these,
I
so
would
that,
love
like,
that.
Yeah.
you would already have
It's like a cheat
policy
sheet.
references, exactly.
Yeah.
I
You
definitely
would
need a
have
cheat
policy
sheet.
references next to all of
Yeah.
these. I'd do that for you.
Thank you, I appreciate
That'd
it.
be great.
Okay, and maybe this next one is gonna be very close to this, so what if there are issues between board members and one-on-one conversations are not providing resolution, then you can't pull another board member in.
Because it would become
Because then you
a.
have a board
Yeah, that's
meeting.
true.
Mud wrestling.
It's not you.
No, I was pointing at you.
I thought you were like,
No, I was like, I said no.
I think we'd have to reach out to
we
OSBA for some help.
don't, so we don't provide mediation.
Okay.
We don't do one-on-one mediation. we do come and do like whole board conflict stuff, but we don't provide the one-on-one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'd have to farm that out?
Somebody.
Okay.
Yeah. But
I
we
nominate
do-
Ed.
Right.
It's like,
We're all doing this, you can see it. We, we have Northwest Regional ESD.
Yeah.
that
Oh,
we call
your
it-
ESD is great.
We've called on ESDs before in circumstances, and usually they have really, either they come out for free or they help support
Yeah,
very,
that's a
very
great
fair
support.
wage, so, yeah.
One of the things not really gonna be able to be something that in all honesty could be written down and we all have to follow this rule, but one of the things that I've noticed in our own community on other boards is that they've had that issue with a board member having an issue with the rest of them, to the point that either that person quit or they were asked to resign or whatever it was. And I remember thinking though at each of the situations in the last 5-6 years that that's happened is at the same time, what a shame that we lost that person, whether they
Right.
were a city council member, they were a school board member, they were whatever, is because they had great things to contribute.
Yeah.
And so it still comes down to me a little bit is that the rest of us got to figure out then what can we do then? Also for that person to feel like that I am listening to you and I am learning from you and you've got great things, but we can't do what you're asking or wanting to do because of this, whether it's a policy or a law or it falls under legal or whatever it may be. But I don't ever want to lose anybody because I think everybody's got something that they're bringing
Yeah,
great
I
to the
agree.
table. So.
Yeah, and definitely, Melody, that's a great point. Like, we don't want anybody to feel so isolated that they leave, right? I mean, like, the goal is to like keep relationships whole and, and I love the idea of reaching out to Northwest Regional.
Yeah.
Or like Mediation Northwest, I think there's
Yeah,
a,
They do a good job too.
Yeah.
There's just, and the state has some folks
Right,
too
right.
that will step out. And sometimes other superintendents, there's some colleagues of ours that are consultants that do
Yeah.
work outside of their role that are really good at that have really great board and superintendent working relationships. But when you say, the thing about, we have to remember that, yes, we don't want to lose board members, and we have to consider the working relationship between the board and superintendent because it reflects all of the work that our staff are doing, and we can lose staff around those things, including the superintendent, right? Because this is a highly turned over seat, right? Because I'm the third one, and I'm not saying I'm leaving, but I'm like the third one in a year. And they were interim, yes, but what is it? It's gone up a little bit. I think it's
Turnover rate?
3 years.
Oh, it's about 3 years.
It's 3 years. It used to be 2, so it's gone up 1, right? But
For here specifically?
no, for this,
No, for the
across the
state.
nation,
Oh.
it's not just the state.
Oh,
It's
okay,
like
Everywhere.
the turnover is 3 years, and COVID didn't do any help with that. But we have to figure out how to collaborate and work together effectively because it impacts everyone, and that's our students, because our students can't just keep having a turnover of people, and so it's really critical. So thank you for bringing that up. It is really critical that we all know our roles and can collaborate and do the board work.
I think knowing the roles is the number one most important part of this new board coming in is that we don't all fully know our roles. Not any one of us fully knows our role.
And it's hard for me because, like you said, like, that's not your role, that's his role. It's because I know the roles.
Right.
This isn't new to me,
Yeah,
being 5 years as a superintendent and then a couple years, 3 years as an executive chief academic officer. It's like, I know the roles, right? And so it's not, and so when I try to help, it's not that I'm trying to I'm just trying to help support and give direction in any way that I can, because I don't want to sit there and watch people flounder, right? Because doesn't feel good to me, but then it can create a tax on our relationship. That isn't my role. If that makes any sense.
Yep. Well, and as I think we discussed when I was here last, it's also, and this is borne out by research, it's also not good for the relationship between the superintendent and the board for the superintendent to train the board and to provide professional development to the board, right? So if you've got like a superintendent who's been a superintendent before and has more experience with roles and responsibilities than the board, and then feels responsibility for training the board in roles and responsibilities, like that disintegrates that relationship too. Because like imagine training your boss, right? Like, right, that's hard. Orienting is one thing, training is another. Right, that's rough. Okay, so if we had, one-on-ones, called in some sort of, looked at some sort of other sort of mediation, and then talked about the operating agreement, right? Had a public conversation, would that take the same path?
Mhm.
Okay.
It'd be just a number there on our agreement that we
Yeah.
bring and discuss, and
Mm-hmm. Yep.
be very open and honest about it.
What?
Oh, sorry.
No,
I was just saying, I think the biggest thing that I've especially watched happen in the last year, but it's not like it hasn't happened maybe here and there throughout all the years of me being around the school district, but is that there were at the same time, and we're all seeing it even every day in our own normal lives now, is that there was things that just would come out of the blue that no one knew how to react to and never seen before, never had happened before. I mean, simply even as somebody that instead of talking was swearing instead, those kind of things was very difficult because everybody was just as hung. How do you handle this one, So you can have all these great rules and we can all think we're on the same page, and then all it takes is one person to throw that a curve, or one person that's a guest that's upset or whatever, that it does make it so sometimes that operating agreements or anything else get broken, no matter with everybody's best intentions to do it the right way.
What I've learned is practice and role playing, like some of even the work session, having time to be able to, like, what if there is a person that's doing public comment that goes outside of what public comment expectations are or policy, what do we do in that circumstance, right? And then practicing that, like when we go to the conference, we're bringing back that information. It's hard. It's hard when you're in it. And I love that. It was the president of the Thespians Club, so I'm a really good actress. So I love role playing, don't I, Ed? I love to role play. So we're actually talking about the things and working it out and practicing those conversations, because it's hard. It's hard work.
At least we're prepared for it
You're
before it
prepared
happens,
beforehand.
and we kind of know what to do.
What happens when you have to call point of order? What does that
Right.
look like, and all of those things? That's part of what I think some of the communication, agreement sometimes, I think even amongst the board, I think sometimes when that conflict arises within board, is that people feel like they're being shut down when that's not what's happening. There's public meeting laws that we have to follow, and it's not because we want to shut down someone's experience, and I think that's where things get taken very personally, and so, yeah.
Well, and just as much as you had 3-4 different, or we did, I should say, superintendents, we also had that many chairmen. And they were just getting good at what they were doing when, for different circumstances, they were gone and now another one came in. So it made it really difficult because everybody was just trying to keep up with what were they supposed to be doing. So the roles again, and learning how it should be, how to keep a meeting under control, which for having to do a lot.
That's my new book,
But,
The
yeah.
Attorney General
No.
Rules.
Oh, yeah, I love that. Is that 2019?
No, it's actually the latest one,
I
2024.
don't mean to say, oh my gosh, you guys are nerds.
Total nerds. I was thinking the same thing, like, oh no, not 2019's edition.
Oh, I want a copy of that. I want to read that tonight.
Everybody keeps forgetting that nobody had time to do anything between COVID.
I've been reading it.
Again, Takes a while.
Oh,
I just fell asleep
I
even thinking
I
about
thought you
reading
said
it.
2019, but 2019 is yellow, so I knew that was a different
Yeah,
one.
no, it's 2024.
That's nice.
All right, I want it memorized in 2
Yeah, well,
Nice.
they reference the OSR and you go right to that and look at it.
Yeah.
I'll have
It
a
tells you.
chance for you.
It's a good. I love
Just
it.
be fair, when you're interviewing the applicants, don't ask them questions from that green book.
Oh, no.
That's
What
not
does page
nice.
56 say? I want
I
the
can't
whole
answer
thing
that
recited
question.
right now.
No, I'm just trying to learn the rules around public
Good,
speaking and meetings.
Good, thank
That's
you.
all.
I like that.
All right, last
Good
one.
leader.
What happens if an operating agreement is violated?
Fired.
Yeah.
I think we need to bring it back in front of the full board in an open meeting and discuss it. And
However, if the agreement is both us and her, that's not something that can be necessarily,
I mean, this is kind of like, I don't know, I'm gonna suggest, I don't know if we necessarily need this one now because we've kind of addressed
Okay.
these in the last two.
Yeah.
let's
I was
hope
think we
thinking more
did.
along
Let's
the
hope we
lines of
don't get
board
there.
Unless
violating
it's
the
not about
operating.
individual conflict.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, if we're talking about something that's not about interpersonal conflict, then, I mean, I guess I could just put except for interpersonal conflict. Then you're talking about things that maybe do need to be brought first. Because the last two are about interpersonal conflict.
Mhm.
And this, I mean, that one doesn't hardly ever really, in all honesty, happen, but at the same time, is if there's been enough prior conversations, whether it's one way or the other, leading up before you ever get to that one, then at that point, you'd have to be right up front with the person that you've been explained, you know why you can't do that,
And you axed.
and you're still doing it.
Okay, at that point, do you like silence someone? Can you do that even? Can you, I don't know, that seems like a weird,
It is, it's really hard.
I can't.
So if something is bad enough, right, like, I mean, so if we go through all of these things, right, and you talk about the operating agreement, you've done all this in public and, you know, whatever, I mean, censure is the outlying thing, right? That's the furthest thing you can get. Now, we always say, like, if you're gonna go that far, maybe get some legal advice before you do that, right? I mean, that is a formal declaration of separation between the board and the actions of an individual board member. There are definite permanent ramifications on the relationship between the board and that member. So it, you know, when that happens, it's usually a fairly extreme thing. But, so careful consideration before that happens.
And I was gonna say, in our town and in local ones that are next to us, probably on both sides, we'll just say, is that it's never ever happened to get a recall to go through. And the second thing is that, to me, it's still that the person needs to be, again, talked to, maybe individually, but as to why we can't keep doing it this way. And they have a choice to either start doing the stuff right, or we're gonna be asking them to step down. That's all you can do. I mean, and that happened recently in one of our communities, but it did take community members to actually get it to that point for the person to agree to step down. It doesn't always happen, but it's happened here at our city council, it's happened in other towns too, but it is a tough one if it gets all the way to that point. I would hope we can maybe prevent from ever getting there.
Yeah, prevention.
I think, you know, one of the things that keeps boards, you know, knowledgeable about their roles is just continued, however you do it, is just continued professional development, right? Like, and continued team building and working together and taking time in work sessions and taking time, you know, to build your knowledge, build foundational skills, build your team, like, you know, like we all do, you know, our business meetings, we get our work done and all of that, but like continuing to build your skills, foundational knowledge and all of that, like keeps you in your roles and keeps you talking about these things. Like, and Christine, you just mentioned prevention, like, and, you know, talking about these things before they come up and developing these tools, like this is the kind of thing that, you know, gets you ahead of those things.
And I was gonna say one thing, and I think that you guys saw how we all did it too, but even though you've got this great policy book and you might have this great green book, but you still can't remember it all no matter what, right? But I feel like when you get to sit down and do the policies, you learn more about them and the understanding of why they are in place and what they apply to, then you just have this magic book sitting over there and you're supposed to kind of keep that always in your mind. So by working on them, and if that means we gotta start at the beginning of that policy book and start working our way through it, or you picking certain ones that are applying right now to what we're dealing with, and we're having discussions about them. Sometimes it's only changing the word "the" for somebody to get the whole point behind a policy. I watched that happen multiple times, that it didn't interpret that way,
Right.
or the "and" or the "or," but.
And you all voted to have a policy review committee, and Rochelle and I have been working on inviting folks to that and scheduling it. And then I love that you all have agreed to rotate through it. Like, it's not just 2 board members doing the whole thing. It's like we start out with like a section, and then we switch out so that everybody has that opportunity to experience it. But then we're also getting feedback from educators and community members, people that are in the garden, on the policies themselves, before we bring them to the board.
It's just great too, at the same time, everything that you get to, even from that team, is that it comes still back here. So that everybody understands why it got written up that way.
I mean, I've printed and read every single policy, couldn't tell you a single one. It's like reading the phone book, honestly, they're so boring, but they're necessary. So like when you need one and it applies, I can go read it and be like, oh yeah, that's right, you know?
Now you get it, right?
Right.
Yeah. It is hard.
And we all, I was referring it today in cabinet, right? It's our tool that we go to if we're questioning something, or if somebody asks a question about what policy do we have in place, or what, is our standard operating procedure aligned with the policy? Because if you're writing a standard operating procedure or administrative rule, it's because we're trying to implement taking the policy into action. And so making sure that it aligns with that is really important, right? Because you're not taking it into action. Like, we just created a standard operating procedure for mandatory reporting because folks were concerned about that, because they wanted to make sure that they were doing it right. Well, here's the thing. They are doing it right, but when people get nervous or fearful of not doing it correctly, it's nice to have this is the checklist on how we do things, right? And this is aligned with board policy and why would you do this first and then this, right? And so it's really helpful. But we as educators still have to look back at policy to make sure all the time, because we're not going to memorize it, but that's why it's there and it's so easily accessible through OSBAs. It's a commercial for OSBA. You get up there in the search button, you can search any word, and it's going to pull up every single policy that has that word in it, and you find them really easily. So
That's what I do.
That's what I do.
I think I have what I need on this. I'm gonna go back, not tonight, and
I want it in the morning.
write this.
You're not gonna type it out right now?
I know.
Like you did last time?
Right now, like
No,
I
I'm
did
just
last
kidding.
time. I'm gonna go back, I'm
I'll
gonna
make you a
write this
copy of
up for you. I'm gonna send it to you in a form that I hope you find acceptable. You can always tweak it. And then you should adopt it formally so that you voted on it, because once you vote on it, right, it's a thing that you will do, right? It has the force of policy. And then it's the same as this, right? You hold yourselves to it. And you can check on it, and you can bring it out at board meetings, and you can talk about it, whether or not you're following it. And then all of these things are really good onboarding tools for your new board member, when you appoint a new board member as well.
And maybe I think in the next couple of our work sessions, we can go over a couple Robert's Rules of Order and what they mean and how we go.
Did you laminate
I
that?
know.
Of course they did.
Oh
Proud of
my
yourself.
gosh.
Reed, how proud of
Oh my
yourself
gosh, you're
when you figured out how to
He
do
just
it.
asked me if I wanted a copy. I'm like,
I got 4.
I love it.
Love
That's
it.
And
fantastic.
memorize too.
No,
Okay.
I'm
You have a
still working.
lamination machine, or is
Yeah.
that like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness?
I even bought the super thick laminator paper.
He was so proud of
I don't like it.
himself.
Those are like,
I don't like it being.
oh my
It's like
gosh,
looking
don't
like
let our
fancy.
elementary school teachers know that you have a laminator at your
It's
house.
cheap.
They might
For me
show up
anyway.
for some laminate some things.
Yeah. You're gonna go worry.
That's a popular thing.
Can I make a suggestion, and so you can take all the time you want this way? Is because we're gonna be appointing a new person, and they're gonna have some catching up to do too, is that we don't extremely go too much more without that person being here. Because otherwise, they're gonna get left lost, then we won't understand why they aren't getting what the other 4 of us
Right.
have.
Yeah.
So not to say that I want to slow us down, but we're gonna do this soon, so,
Right.
you know, it's that, getting that, but then maybe not working on this totally till that person's here too.
And also about professional learning, right? Like we talked about, like continuing to grow, and we have like dates on our, the agenda that's certain events, but we have a November conference that's coming up. And so I do think that it would be extremely important for the new board member to be able to attend that conference as well, because it's an amazing way to understand roles and responsibilities of superintendent and board, and also why these things are so important. And when you have really good board superintendent operating agreements and communication agreements, they should never change just because a new person comes aboard. You stay with them and you train people alongside, and you say, these have been working for us, but if you have feedback and you'd like to change something, we're more than willing to listen to that, right? But these are the agreements that we follow. It's kind of like the legacy thing. It doesn't matter who sits in these seats, that we are really working towards a high-functioning board and superintendent.
Yeah, which I understand. I just know too, though, that most time it usually is July 1 when a new board member comes in, so they get to go to that first conference. It's in the summer that teaches them a lot of this. This person could actually almost practically walk in even after the second conference if we don't get them in place or they're not able to even attend that. So that's all I was thinking is that let's at least start out with this part being that everybody's on the same page and then go from there. So absolutely.
That's all I have for you. You all did really good work.
Thank you.
All right, pizza.
Thank you for being here, yeah.
Yeah, of course, anytime.
Yeah, home court certified.
Okay. A couple more things we got on our agenda. Number 4.
I'm gonna leave you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you
Do you
very
need
much.
anything else from me?
No, thank you for coming out and helping us again. Upcoming meetings and board meeting agenda input. October 22nd is our regular session and board interviews. And if you note down below, dates of interest, we will be appointing a new board member at that time also. So just be prepared. November 6th through the 8th is the OSBA conference, and I believe that's in downtown Portland. November 12th, 2025, regular session. December 10th, 2025, a regular session. And then some points of interest dates. The 10th, October 10th, there's no school in service date. October 13th, 2025, the application window closes at noon for open board position. October 15th through the 21st, board will review and screen applicants. October 22nd, board interviews and appointment new board member in open session. And then October 22nd, we're back for it'll be a regular board meeting also.
The 15th through the 21st, are we having meetings that day? So that,
No, you get the
I'll
packets.
send you.
oh,
Yeah.
I'll send you all the applicants.
okay.
And then what I heard Kristen say was that we should be adding to the next board meeting the timeline for our evaluation and adopting this evaluation as our evaluation. Yeah,
Okay.
and we'll make sure that we follow up on that. Yeah.
Okay, and then one other kind of side note, our board has been challenged by SCAPU's board to compete at the 7 Mile Civil War at halftime, and
Board to board something?
Yeah.
I work with both of you, I don't know who to
and
Don't worry, we win all the time.
I don't know about this year though.
I know.
We're going to set a tee up on the 10-yard line, and each board member gets 2 tries to kick a field goal.
I'm not sure my foot can
I don't know if I can
Dude,
kick,
that's a far
so.
kick.
That is a far kick.
do.
But I have also gotten permission for superintendent or principals or whomever to help fill out the team.
Dude, that's a 20-yard
So we
kick.
need a couple more members because we are going to be down a few people due to
Yes.
personal reasons.
Yes. So I don't know.
So,
All right.
Is there anything else we want to add, talk about?
nothing for me.
Okay, well, then I make a motion that we adjourn. Is there a second, please?
I second, or
Okay, I'm
third.
just gonna
I
say,
fourth it.
What were you saying?
oh, she was woo-wooing.
Because
Because we're going home before bedtime.
All in favor, on this one, I'll just go all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Yay.